The Magic Shoes, from the O'Brien Book of Irish Fairy Tales and Legends. Stories retold by Una Leavy, illustrations by Susan Field, and published by O'Brien Press. This story is suitable for ages 7 and up. The Magic Shoes. There was a king long ago called Fergus Crooked-Neck. He had once been the handsomest man in the world. But one day he went swimming in a nearby lake, not knowing that a ferocious water monster lived there. The monster attacked, twisting the poor king's neck so badly that it was crooked ever after, and no one could make it straight. The king's men failed to capture the monster, who lived deep in the centre of the dark, mysterious lake. At this time too, there lived another king called Yubdan. His kingdom was the lost wild valleys between the mountains and the secret caves of the ancient gods. You see, Yubdan was king of the leprechauns, and a proud, boastful little fellow he was. One day, Yubdan held a great feast to which all the leprechauns and fairies were invited. There was roast field mouse and breast of robin, woodbine honey and elderberry wine. Yubdan sat with his wife Babo, smiling at the noise and fun. After a while, he stood up to speak. "Is this the best feast you ever had?" he asked. "It is," shouted the little people. "And who is the bravest, cleverest, richest king that ever lived?" "You are," they yelled. The king smirked till a sniffly laugh rippled from the back of the crowd. King Yubdan flushed. "Who dares to laugh at me?" he roared. One of the leprechauns stepped forward. It was Eshert, the royal poet. "You!" gasped the king. "Are you saying that I am not the bravest, cleverest, richest king that ever lived?" "Of course you're not," Eshert said calmly. "King Fergus Crooked-Neck is greatest by far." "What?" screeched the king. "Traitor! Lock him up. He will be punished for this lie." Immediately, 2 guards began to drag Eshert away. "Wait! Listen!" shouted Eshert. "What I say is the truth. King Fergus is a human. His army is 10,000 times greater than ours. Not one of us could carry even one of his gold coins." "Rubbish!" shrieked King Yubdan. "Such nonsense! It's nothing but lies." "Let me prove it," cried Eshert. "At least give me one chance to prove that I'm telling the truth." Now most of the leprechauns liked Eshert and were sorry to see him in trouble. "Give him a chance, O king," someone yelled. "Yes, give him a chance. Give Eshert a chance," cried the crowd. "Very well," said King Yubdan then. "You have 3 days. But if you have lied, you will be banished forever from our world." Eshert prepared for his journey at once, dressing himself in velvet and silk and taking his jewelled sword. Then off he went. The way was long and difficult. Soon the grass made gigantic stalks over his head. Bees seethed in his ear like flying monsters. Sleek furry paws clawed at him as he passed. But eventually he reached the gates of King Fergus Crooked-Neck's fort. How the guards laughed when they saw the tiny little man. They gladly opened the gates, however, and carried him to the king. With a smile, they set him down on the table between goblets and plates. The king and his guests stared in disbelief. Then they laughed so hard that Eschert staggered backwards. "Have a drink, little man," someone shouted in a thundering voice. "No, thank you," replied Eschert. "I have come to speak to the king." But a rough hand reached out and dropped him into a cup of wine. Poor Eschert floundered and spluttered. "Take me out," he gasped. "If you do, I will give you knowledge and wisdom." There was a roar of laughter. Now Eschert was getting angry. "Did you know, O king, that the bald man sitting beside you cheats you at chess?" The man gulped, and blushes ran up his neck. "And that man with the red beard has stolen money from your treasury. And yourself, O king, have—" But before he could say another word, the king hurriedly lifted Eschert out of the wine. At once Eschert composed a poem, praising the king for his kindness and bravery. King Fergus was very pleased. A pincushion was brought for Eschert to sit on, and he joined in the feast. For 2 days he remained as a royal guest, but now it was time to return with proof. "I will send my dwarf A with you," King Fergus said. "He is the smallest person in my kingdom. When your king sees him, he will know you are telling the truth." So A and Eschert set off. Now Eschert rode in A's pocket, giving directions as they went. Eventually, a hare came running towards them, wearing a golden saddle. "It's King Yubdon's horse," Eschert explained. "He will carry us home quickly." Everyone had gathered to see Eschert's return. But when they saw the dwarf, they screamed and ran. King Yubdon, however, bravely stayed on his throne. "This is A," Eschert announced, "the smallest man in the kingdom of King Fergus Crookedneck. This is proof that I told the truth. And now, King Yubdon, I challenge you to go there yourself and taste the royal porridge in the king's kitchen." King Yubdon knew that he would be shamed if he refused. "I will go at once," he said, "for I am curious to see how these humans live." "And I will go with you," Queen Bebo declared. It was nearly night, so dressing themselves in their mouse skin robes, away they rode. All night they travelled on whispering shadowy paths. The moon faded as they reached the fort and passed the sleeping guards. Through the great wide halls they rode till at last they found the kitchen. How enormous everything seemed! A huge porridge pot stood on the table, with a gigantic spoon resting on the rim. With a mighty leap, the horse jumped onto the table, but Yubdon was unable to climb up the pot. "Try standing on the horse's back," suggested Bebo. Now Yubdon could reach the spoon. He snatched at the handle, but losing his balance, he fell headfirst into the porridge. "Gurgle, murgle, splutter, gulp." "Are you all right?" asked Bebo anxiously. Before Yubdon could answer, the door opened and in came the servants to prepare breakfast. "What's this?" boomed a voice. "A tiny man in the porridge? What a messy little fellow he is. And this must be his wife. Let's take them to the king. He has always regretted letting go of King Fergus was delighted when he saw them. "You will remain here," he said to the pair. "People will come from far and near to see the little people at my court. I will treat you well, but you must not try to escape." So Yubdan and Babo remained at King Fergus' crooked neck's court. They saw for themselves that Eschert had told the truth. After a while they longed to go home, but there was no chance of escape. Time passed. The leprechauns were worried about their king and queen. They held a meeting. "We must go to rescue them," Eschert said, and he led a mighty army to the gates. "We want our king and queen," they shouted in their high-pitched voices. "No," said King Fergus, "my court is famous since they came. King Yubdan and Queen Babo will remain here as my guests." "If you do not let them go, we will scatter all your cattle," said Eschert then. "I will not let them go," King Fergus said. "We will poison all the water. I will not let them go. We will burn each mill and storehouse. I will not let them go. We will flatten all your corn. I will not let them go. If you do not release them, we will make all your people bald, every man, every woman, and all your little children." "If you do that," said King Fergus angrily, "you will never see your king and queen again." Then Yubdan asked to speak to his people. "You must not cause any trouble," he said. "Go home peacefully. King Fergus and I will sort this out ourselves." So, grumbling and grousing, the little folk returned home. "Now," said King Yubdan, "you see that my people are very angry. You may have any of my treasures if you release myself and Babo." And Yubdan showed his wonderful possessions: a spear that always hit the target, a belt that prevented sickness, a cauldron that was never empty, and a pair of magic shoes that could walk on water. King Fergus thought for a moment, then he smiled. "I'll take the shoes," he said. "If they prove their magic, you will both be free to go." Of course, the shoes were tiny, but they stretched to fit. Then, taking his sword, King Fergus set out for the nearby lake. The day was still, and his reflection shimmered in the water. The sight of his crooked neck filled him with rage. Putting on the magic shoes, he stepped lightly over the water. There, in the centre, the monster lay asleep. Fergus dived, plunging with his sword. At once a fountain of blood shot into the air. There was a wild struggle. The monster lashed and thrashed, but the king was faster. He skipped across the waves, thrusting and cutting as the monster appeared. With one last rush, Fergus swiped off the creature's head. To his great surprise, his own neck was immediately straight, and all the people watching him clapped and cheered. And so Queen Yubdan and Queen Babo were released. There was feasting and dancing till the next new moon. Yubdan couldn't quite help boasting a little about his great escape, but he never ate porridge after that. The end.